Hi, this is Sue Jackson, and I'm here today with a tag video. This is the Get to Know My Taste tag. It was created by Ines at My Name is Ines and by Sam at Thoughts on Tomes. I was tagged all the way back in July while we were traveling by Melinda at A Web of Stories, and also more recently by Anna G at Reading Through the Generations. This is a great video to watch if you're new to my channel, because this will tell you all about my taste in books and reading. So question 1, how do you rate books? Give a quick rundown of how you do your star ratings, or if you don't use star ratings, how you evaluate books. Well, this is interesting because just yesterday, my neighborhood book group met and we had a big discussion on ratings and what criteria you use. Now, in my book group, we rate our books out of 10. Of course, Goodreads and Storygraph use a 5 out of 5 rating system. I don't personally rate my books. If I didn't have to do it on Goodreads, and I guess I don't have to, but it's part of their system. So I do choose a rating on Goodreads. And I've just recently joined Storygraph. But typically, like, I've had a book blog for 18 years and I never rated my books. But for me, in using the Goodreads scale, my criteria is kind of a 5, and this is what I was talking about with my book group yesterday. In order to get 5 stars, a book has to really make me feel something or make me think. So the book we were rating yesterday in book group was a fast-paced psychological thriller. And that's why, we got into this whole discussion. Well, how do you rate a book like this? Do you rate it based on how it compares to other books of its kind? Or do you rate it, we got into a whole big long discussion. There could be a whole video just on that. So for me personally, 5 stars, it moved me somehow. It made me think, it made me feel. I laughed, I cried. That's a 5-star book for me. A 4-star book, I really loved it, but it didn't quite raise to that level of 5 stars. And because I don't really use ratings outside of Goodreads, I use what they've written for the different things. So they say a 3-star book is good, and 4 stars is very good, and 5 stars is I loved it. Or something along those lines. So that's what I use too. If a book was good, I really have no complaints, but it didn't move me, it didn't make me think, it didn't make me feel, it didn't make me laugh, then that's probably going to be a 3-star for me. Honestly, almost everything I read is 4 and 5 stars. In part because I know what kind of books I like. And I do read a wide variety. And some are chosen by my book group. Some are chosen by Booktopia, that book event I go to every spring in Vermont. So it's very rare that I read a book I rate lower than 3 stars. There are a few in my ratings. And 1 star, I think, is just needless, because if a book's that bad or I dislike it that much, I'm not even going to finish reading it. And I do believe you should read at least most of a book before you give it a rating. That's a pet peeve of mine. I really dislike when somebody rates a book low and then I find out, they read 100 pages and gave up. I don't believe in that. So, okay. For someone who doesn't use ratings, I talked about that way too much. Okay, question 2. How do you approach reviewing books? What's your review style? Are you analytical, emotional, casual, or structured? I definitely prefer a casual approach, and I've written book reviews for decades, both as part of my career and as part of my blog, my personal book blog. on the book blog, my structure was always short paragraph about how I came to be reading this book or why I chose it, a paragraph about the basic plot of the book with no spoilers ever in a review. That's my rule. And then the third paragraph would be my thoughts and feelings about it, my impressions, what I thought of it. Although I am a very analytical person, my review style is casual, conversational, and here on BookTube as well. I want to tell you a little bit about the book without any spoilers, and I want to tell you what I thought of it personally, me. And that's the other thing about ratings. I don't rate a book with thoughts to what other people might think. It's just my opinion, period. Question 3, what's the book that made you a reader? Whether it was your first favorite or the one that got you hooked, what book started it all? I've talked about this a lot on my channel. I just recently did the childhood books tag, which was so much fun. I love nostalgia, especially about books. As I said in that tag, I've been a book lover since day one. So, so I've always loved books. In the early days, I read a lot of Nancy Drew, the Bobbsey twins, like everybody did. And I've very often on my channel talked about my love of A Wrinkle in Time. I would say this was the first book that I was absolutely obsessed over, by Madeleine L'Engle, and I went on to read the rest of the series. I think there's a fourth book as well that I don't have, but loved that. But in watching Maddie Inez's video, her original video for this tag, she reminded me of another book that had a profound effect on my reading life. And that was when our second grade teacher would read to us at the end of the day while we were waiting for the buses. And one of the books she read aloud to us was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. And I was blown away. And as soon as she finished reading this to us, I went right to the school library the next day and I read the rest of the series. Now, these are newer. These were the ones we got for our sons. But yeah, after she read that to us, I read the whole series. Just flew through them. So that might have been even earlier than A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. The Narnia books really got me hooked on reading. And it was the first time I got just so pulled in by a series that I wanted to keep reading. So that even predates A Wrinkle in Time. Question 4, do you have a genre niche? Are there certain genres you gravitate toward, or do you read widely across genres? I read widely across genres. This time of year in the fall, I love to read darker stuff, mysteries, thrillers, suspense, dystopian, anything like that. But I read a wide variety. I love certain kinds of science fiction. I love historical fiction, contemporary fiction. I read nonfiction. I read classics. I would say the only two genres I don't read a lot of, but still some, are romance and fantasy. Don't read a whole lot of either one of those, but I do read some. So all genres. Question 5, do you generally prefer character-driven or plot-driven stories? Yes. I think the really great books have both. But certainly, I would say what's most important to me in most books is emotional depth. So that would mean character-driven. But I love a good plot. I love plot twists that surprise me. Plot very often drives the narrative and gives the author a vehicle for showing the characters' personalities and emotions. So, I think the best books have both of those, but if I had to only choose one, it would probably be character. Question 6, what's a book you love so much that you don't care if others don't like it? What's that one book that you love enough for everyone? So I really had to think about this for a while, because generally, if I love a book, I want everyone else to love it. And I love to share books that way. But the more I thought about it, I realized I feel that way about The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. One of my all-time favorite books, perhaps number one. Though as with ratings, I don't like ranking books either, because there's too many good ones out there. But I've read this twice, and both times it made me sob, even knowing what was coming. It makes me laugh out loud. So this goes back to what I was saying about a book that makes me feel. I love time travel plots. The twistiness of them, they are so thought-provoking. And you can't help, when you read a book that plays with time, you can't help to think, what if that was me? What would I do? How would I live my life? I love all those things about it. It's beautifully written. Very in-depth character development. So that goes back to both character and plot. However, I realized I do know people that didn't love this book. I know people for whom the structure of it was too complicated, because the main character travels back and forth in time involuntarily. The narrative is all out of order. At the beginning of each chapter, you get what the date is and how old each of the two main characters are. So I didn't have trouble following it. It's part of what I like about it, that complexity, but that's not for everyone. So I'm okay if not everyone loves this book, because I love it enough for everyone. So question 7 is kind of the opposite of that. What's a book you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, you know that your reading tastes don't align? The book or books where a difference of opinion is a strong indicator of different reading preferences. So again, I thought about this one quite a bit too. And I came up with books by Barbara Kingsolver generally. But in particular, The Poisonwood Bible, Demon Copperhead. Oh, and I've got another one up here too. The Bean Trees, and its sequel, Pigs in Heaven. So all of these books by Barbara Kingsolver have the same elements that I absolutely love. She is one of my favorite authors. She tells you stories about people, in-depth emotions, lots of character development, but also interesting plots that move forward. She's always got a sense of humor. There's a lot of humor in the Poisonwood Bible, and she pairs humor and tragedy, which is real life. I feel like she's an author who writes about real life. That was true in the Poisonwood Bible, in the Bean Trees and Pigs in Heaven, in Demon Copperhead, certainly. Those are my favorites of her books, but all of her books are like that. Very often historical fiction or contemporary fiction. Very different topics. This is about a missionary family in Africa in, I think, the 1950s. Demon Copperhead takes place, I think, around the 90s in Appalachia. You know, very different subject matters, but they've got that core of emotional depth, propulsive plots, interesting characters that you're rooting for, and a sense of humor. All the elements I love. So when I meet someone else who also loves Barbara Kingsolver, I know we've got similar reading tastes. Question 8, what's in your trash pocket? What books, tropes, or themes that you know are bad, but you love them anyway? I honestly couldn't think of anything for this. For starters, I don't think anything in a book is bad. It's a matter of taste. And I couldn't think of anything that I like in books that might be thought of as bad. Yeah, maybe I don't have a trash pocket. I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't think of anything here. I mean, I know there are things other people don't like in books, like sex or profanity, that don't bother me, but I don't think that's quite what she's talking about here. Okay, question 9. Do you have any deal breakers in books? Something that, if present, immediately turns you off from a book. So again, this is a tough one for me. I read such a wide variety. Most things don't really bother me. I would say very graphic violence. Now, I do read mysteries and thrillers, as I said, so they very often do include violence. But when the violence is very graphically described on the page, I don't need that. And especially if it's graphic violence against children. But just this year, in the last year, I've read 2 books that included horrible violence against children that I still thought were excellent books. So I guess if it's not essential to the story, one of those books is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Fanon Jeffers. It's one of my favorite books of the year. And we were just talking about that at book group too, because that was our previous book. And there are some horrific scenes of violence against children in that book, sexual violence against children, that were really difficult to read about. But it's the story of a family, not over generations, but over centuries, from the 1600s to the present. And those scenes, as horrifying as they were essential to the plot and to the emotions of the novel. They were a central part of what the main character was trying to deal with. They were something that linked the past and the present. So as much as I hated reading those parts, they were absolutely necessary in that book. This did say something that, if present, immediately turned you off from a book. Poor writing. I might not keep reading a book if it's just really poorly written. And there was one book when I was a professional reviewer, trying to think, this was for Shelf Awareness, I think, either that or Publishers Weekly. They would let us choose from several different book descriptions, and the one I chose arrived. It was a German book translated into English. It was narrated by the pond in the backyard, which I really struggled with, but I was like, okay, I'll just go with it. And then we got to a scene where the mother was having sexual fantasies about her 13-year-old son. And I was like, that's it. I'm out. And I called my editor and I told him, and I said, could I pick a different one? And, he was great about it. But yeah, so that's the one time I can remember feeling that way. So books narrated by geographic features where there's an incestual relationship. It's kind of a narrow category, but okay. Question 10. What's a strong opinion you have about a book released within the last year? Whether it's overrated, underrated, or just a take that you need to share. So here's the thing. I don't read many books released in the current year. In fact, I rarely do. The one exception to that is the books I read every spring for Booktopia. that book event in Vermont in May, those are always new releases, or mostly new releases. So this isn't like a hot take or anything, but one of the Booktopia books this year, released in May, was Rabbit Moon by Jennifer Haig, which I got signed by the author. I got to meet her. So the reason I chose this one is that Jennifer Haig has long been one of my favorite authors, and many people have never heard of her. But she's very prolific, and she has so many novels I enjoyed, but she's not like, I don't know why, but she's not usually on the bestseller list, or when I talk about her, people don't know about her. And so what I loved about this was, because it was a Booktopia book, and there are usually about 8 authors and 100 readers at Booktopia, it's a whole weekend devoted to talking about books and doing fun things with books like book trivia. So besides getting to meet Jennifer in person, which was a highlight for me, all the other people at Booktopia got to know what I've known for years, that she's a really good author and has written some great books. So I loved that about this book. Question 11, what do you look for in writing? What makes a book stand out to you? Is it prose style, themes, voice, structure, or something else? I would say what makes a book stand out to me is if the writing is not good. And we discussed that a little bit at book group yesterday too. I think in some ways, if a book is very well written, you don't notice the writing. What you notice is that you're fully pulled into the story. You are immersed in those characters' lives. You feel like you're living in that world. You think about it when you're not reading. You can't wait to pick the book up again. Those are all indicators of good writing. So I guess I'm describing it more of I know it when I see it kind of thing. But I mean, obviously, character development's a part of that. She mentioned voice. Yeah, voice can make a book really interesting, particularly if it's told from an unusual point of view. Not a pond, but yeah, I mean an unusual person's point of view. So I think good writing is all of those elements. It's all of it together. She mentioned structure. As I said, that's one of the things I love about The Time Traveler's Wife. We are experiencing life as Henry is, with his time all mixed up. I love that the book is structured that way. If it were told from start to finish, not only wouldn't it make a lot of sense chronologically, but it wouldn't be right for the story. So I think all of those elements, prose style, themes, voice, structure, all of those elements have to be the right choice for that particular story and those characters. Question 12, how do you decide what to read next? Do you plan ahead, mood read, or follow external factors like hype, recommendations, and arcs? Well, I have a full bookcase of books waiting to be read that now has a double row on one shelf. I'll show you a picture. So as you're looking at it, the right side of that second shelf is my husband's stuff, and the stuff stacked horizontally is my husband's as well. But all the rest of the bookcase is mine. Lots and lots and lots of books waiting to be read. So for the most part, I try to pick from my own shelves. I almost never buy books for myself. The exception is if I'm visiting an independent bookstore, I like to support them, and I might pick out one book. So what to read next? For me, I do a lot of seasonal reading. Right now in the fall, like I said, I read darker stuff. I do nonfiction November. Whether there's still someone hosting it on BookTube or not, I've been doing it for years in the blogging world, and I'll continue doing it. December and January are kind of my read whatever I want time, and also read as much as I can from my own shelves because Christmas is coming and I'm going to get more books. February, I like to do Black History Month, read books by Black authors or about Black characters. March and April, I'm getting ready for Booktopia that first weekend in May. So I'm usually reading whatever books have been chosen for Booktopia. The rest of May, I'm just reading from my shelves. Of course, from the end of May through the end of August, beginning of September, that's Big Book Summer, the reading event that I host every year. This was the 13th year. And I do devote the whole summer to big books. That's not the point of it. You don't have to do that, but that's how I choose to do it. You set your own goals for the challenge, but and those are all books off my own shelves as well. And then we're back to fall. So that's how I pick my books. So not a lot of external factors other than Booktopia. As I said, I'm almost never reading new releases, so I'm always behind on that. Question 13, where do you get inspiration for your BookTube content? What sparks your video ideas? Other creators, trends, personal reading experiences? I feel like I've kind of gotten into a rut where my BookTube content is the same stuff every week. I mean, a lot of my viewers seem to like that. I do a weekly wrap up of what I've been reading on Friday reads. I often post a tag video on Tuesdays, and I'm also trying to fit in here and there travel videos, a little bit of content about chronic illness. So yeah, so I feel like I don't have quite as much time for BookTube. What I would like to do, I would like to do more like top 10 type videos, my top 10 favorite sci-fi thrillers, or my, things like that. I think that would be fun. I did some of that on my blog years ago, and yeah, top 10 lists are always a lot of fun. I'd like to do a little more of that. Let me know what you would like to see in my BookTube content. I would love to hear from you. And yeah, let me know what you want and I'll try to do it. Question 14 is another tough one for me. If you could make any book go viral right now, what would it be? A book you think deserves more attention and why? So again, I'm never on the cutting edge. I'm always reading older stuff that has already gone viral or was popular years ago even. Some of my favorite books this year were The Prince of Tides by Pat Conroy, which everyone else in the world read decades ago. And I have just discovered, loved that book. I loved Deacon King Kong by James McBride, I think, right? I read that back in February, loved that book. As I said, I loved the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, but everybody else was talking about that a couple of years ago. Same with The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. Yeah, I'm always kind of behind the times. I guess I would say go back to Rabbit Moon by Jennifer Haig. I would love for more people to discover what a great writer she is. And question 15, who are some booktubers with reading tastes similar to yours? So this is the tag part of the video, but I'm choosing booktubers whose reading tastes are similar to mine. Well, the first person who comes to mind is Melinda at A Web of Stories, but she tagged me in this video, so I can't tag her back, but we do have very similar reading tastes. The other people I thought of were Suey's Book Banter, Book Chat with Pat, Elmo at El Mossy. I'm relatively new to their channel, but I could tell by what they were reading over the summer for Big Book Summer that we do have similar reading tastes. And Lori at Books, Ink, and Paper, good friend of mine, and I think we've got similar reading tastes as well. So you're all tagged, as well as anyone else who's interested in doing this fun video. If you're newer to BookTube, this is a great way to let people know what your reading tastes are. And I would love to hear from you. Please let me know in the comments down below what your reading tastes are like. What genres do you like? What's your favorite book of all time that you want everyone to know about? Let me know in the comments down below.